May I comment, sir?
Please go.
Good afternoon, Chairpersons and the board. Take a
Please
seat.
sit.
Thank you.
Aman,
Yes, sir.
D school.
Yes, sir. First year.
You are from D school. What are you going to recommend about the country's economic problems and what you feel should be the appropriate policies to adopt? Very briefly. Country is too big for you to be able to say everything. What would you suggest?
So I think the fundamental problem that we have right now is unemployment and the economy being out of tune with providing employment to the largely unemployed. So I think the structural transformation from agriculture to services or industry has to take into account that we have to have proper skilling for the people who move out of agriculture so that they can be rightly absorbed into industry or services.
So may I just stop you here? When you say unemployment through services or industry,
Right, sir?
which provides greater employment?
Industry.
Industry.
Industry, sir.
Then why do you bring up services? Services is normally termed as jobless growth.
Yes.
It boosts your GDP, but does nothing at all as such for unemployment. Why would you then come on to this?
So because I personally feel that there's a greater coherence between industry and services in today's economy. For example, services can make industry more productive in terms of marketing and making the processes more mobile. So there is a scope for maybe increasing the elasticity of employment when it comes to services, and for that we need to have the proper facilities and infrastructure.
Aman, elasticity is a very slippery slope.
Yes.
Yes. Elasticity of demand, elasticity of anything. It's a very slippery slope. Now you're opening up a door. I don't know whether you'll be able to sustain your responses on that. Let's talk about services. There's something very specific about the India-Australia trade deal which has just been signed.
Yes, sir.
What is it called, that trade deal?
So I think it's CEPA.
Sorry, India-Australia?
So I'm
Just-
not very sure of the exact name of the deal.
ECTA.
Right, sir.
Did you read the article written by the two trade ministers, joint article?
No, sir. I think I read a summary of it and not the original article.
Which paper?
So I'm not sure.
All right. It was in Times of India, and they called. Do you know how to write Ekta in English using the word Ekta is in Hindi, but using English alphabets? How would you write Ekta?
Unity.
No, how do you write it? E what?
EKTA.
EKTA.
Right.
And yet both the ministers used ECTA and they said Ekta means unity. Now what are they playing on? You don't write Ekta
Yes, sir.
as ECTA, yet both ministers, they put their names to that article and said Ekta is very important, it means unity.
Yes, sir. So I don't get the questions. I'm sorry.
Okay, doesn't matter. Have you read about that trade deal?
Yes, sir.
How is India going to benefit? Considering that India's exports to Australia are mainly, what are the exports?
Services,
All right.
and Australia exports wines and.
Now, what else besides services?
So I think so. It's majorly services and some of engineering goods also.
All right.
Yes, and
Jewelry,
garments,
jewelry.
gems and jewelry. Yes, sir.
And handicraft items?
Yes, sir. But
And what is the reverse flow of trade?
so it's wine. I think it's. So I'm not very sure of the exact items. Yes.
What else do you think could be the benefit of this? In which sector is India going to benefit?
So I think it might primarily be services only, because even Australia coming up as a services center will need some sort of back-end teams working in countries where the wages are relatively lower.
Right.
So I think that's one sector where we can expand.
Right.
And also, so given that our exports are booming, we recently had the 400 billion, touched the 400 billion mark in the last financial year.
Now that you're talking of billions, we used to talk of a 5 trillion economy.
Yes.
Used to. They must have looked at you in D school and said, let us tell you about a trillion economy. What happened to that? No one's talking about it anymore.
So I think certainly the pandemic is we won't allow the target to be met.
Aman, we could still talk about it. Maybe we could say that the target has got delayed.
Yes, sir.
Is dead silence on that. What explains it? Was it something incorrect to have come out with ipso facto unachievable target?
So initially, I think when it was announced, the political assumption was that even if we grow at the nominal 7 or 8% rate, we will compound to a 5 trillion economy in FY26 or 27, which is 2020.
Have you heard of the rule of 72?
Rule of 70, no, sir.
Oh, it's a very simple thumb rule. Rule of 70, some people call it 70, some people call it 70.
So the things
if you need to double something,
7 years, it
well, you
compounds over 7
divide
years.
that by the rate of growth.
Yes, sir.
So would we have actually achieved in the year that they were stating if you apply the rule of 72?
So that time also the country was going through a cyclical slowdown and we had bottomed out. So I read articles by economists that the economy can only go upwards because the slowdown
so
was then
what
supposed
was the
to.
rate of growth required for us to achieve?
So 8%.
In 8%, we'd
Yes,
have
sir.
been able to achieve it the year it was announced. Okay. Which other state in the country has come out with a similar target of certain trillion or billion?
So I think UP has taken out a new circular where it's I think asking advertising for proposals to reach the 1 trillion target.
1 trillion.
Yes, sir.
If UP can do 1 trillion, then what's wrong with the rest of the country? If one state can do a trillion, there are how many states in India, do you know?
Yes, sir.
How many?
28.
28.
Yes, sir.
So 28 states, even if we take an average of 500,000 each, 500 billion each, how much should the country be growing at?
So exactly. So it'll be around we might reach 14 or 15 trillion.
So why did we get stuck at 5, which also is unachievable?
So I think that shows us that we need to have greater decentralization of economic policies so that the states can have their own growth and then it compounds up to the national level.
My colleagues will interact with you.
So, Aman, your optional was economics, no?
Yes.
A lot of these food delivery platforms are coming up. What kind of market they are operating in?
So I don't get the questions.
Like Zomato, Swiggy, all are these platforms. What kind of market structure they are operating in?
So I think it's, so I'm not aware of the technical terms.
Your option is economics.
Yes, sir.
Which kind of
E-commerce, e-commerce market.
E-commerce market.
Yes, sir.
How do you define market?
So market, so I think it's an ecosystem where buyers and sellers meet to exchange goods for a payment.
And how you divide markets in different categories like perfectly and imperfectly competitive markets?
Yes. So a perfectly competitive market is where everybody offers, we get the lowest price, which is the marginal cost because there are many sellers in the market. So that game theoretically brings the price to the lowest common possible number. And imperfect competition is where we have monopolies or oligopolies where they charge prices above the marginal cost.
So what is the basic difference between perfectly and imperfectly markets?
So the number of sellers.
Number of sellers?
Yes, and the price, which influences the price.
Are you sure? Or it's about elements of monopoly?
So of course elements of monopoly also because monopoly will exist when there are less sellers because they can drive the markets, they have the market forces in their hands.
Okay. What is AP Lerner formula of measuring degree of monopoly?
Yes, sir. So I think the Lerner formula shows the degree of monopoly that exists in the market. So I cannot recall the exact.
How oligopoly is different from other markets?
From other markets. So oligopoly is somewhere in between a competitive and a monopoly market. Monopoly, we have maximum one seller in a perfectly monopolistic monopoly market. But in oligopoly, you have either two or more sellers, but not enough to make it perfectly competitive. So you have an oligopoly which is two.
You're just taking the number of sellers only on the consideration. There is a one concept of interdependence.
Yes, sir.
Interdependence among the firms.
Yes,
is
sir.
There in other markets?
No, sir. Oligopoly is the greatest interdependence because
So,
yeah.
Because of that, what they will have to?
Advertising and then influence and giving incentives to customers and not engaging in a price battle because that is harmful for all firms in an oligopoly. So there are different methods
What are the major barriers of entry in the oligopoly markets?
So first is the price maybe to set up, let's say, the initial project. Then secondly is the fact that the existing incumbents have already existing incumbents are already operating at a price which might not permit entry. So somebody willing to enter the market.
Recently, 15th Finance Commission has given its recommendation. What are the basic criteria on which they do the devolution of these resources?
So first the Finance Commission calculates the net devolution which has to occur, which is the net taxes collected at the central level, and then you have criteria like population, demographic performance, state area.
There is argument by some states, particularly southern state, that we are performing better on this demographic account and we are being penalized.
Yes, sir.
What policy measure you would suggest that their concern could be addressed?
So I think
which census is used for this demography figure?
so And
Which
pardon,
which
sir?
which census is used? Data of which census?
So recently we shifted to 2011, but for the demographic performance, we're looking at the changes
Indian
from.
Finance Commission is based on.
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
And for the demographic performance, you look at the net change from 1971 to the last census.
Okay. Abhijit Banerjee got Nobel Prize
Yes.
for what?
So for randomized control trials, so his area of work was having experiments.
Which area do you feel we can apply those trials in India?
So maybe merit goods at the local level, then something like microfinance, how people use the money that they get. So I think RCTs are, at least when you look at JPAL's work, it's mostly directed at providing essentials and merit goods to the people at the grassroots, and then observing the behavioral changes.
What is antitrust laws?
So antitrust laws is basically when to ensure competition in the market and to allow that to not allow firm to engage into prices that harm the consumer.
What kind of framework do we have in India parallel to this antitrust law?
So we do have the Competition Act of 2002, which promises regulation to not allow for.
What is their basic power?
So I think they can. They do have a judicial board, which reviews mergers and acquisitions and practices by.
What is the difference between merger and acquisitions?
So merger is more like a willing synthesis between two business bodies or economic firms, whereas acquisition is when you buy out a firm.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Aman, you are from Bihar. Bihar has a good scope for tourism, no? For tourism, particularly for all the religious tourism. No? But it is not flourishing. What is the problem? Suppose you are tourism secretary there in Bihar, principal secretary of tourism department. What priority areas need to be worked on?
So I do believe first we need to map the places where we can have an influx of tourists and then devise a strategy accordingly. First, I think advertisement is very important because we see that major states are advertising about the tourism sector in newspapers and magazines. So I think being conscious that Bihar does have a rich resource of tourism places to offer, I think that's the first important step. And secondly, I think so you also need to incentivize setting up of hotels and other places where tourists can have a comfortable stay. And also, so connectivity is very important because although Bihar is well connected by rail, you also need to have a thriving culture of tourist vehicles and etc. so that people can travel and enjoy.
If I say image building is lacking,
Yes, sir.
so what you will do for image building? Because it is having a image. No, I have worked in so many Southeastern Asian countries, and particularly the people they visit, but they say it is good, but we'll never go again. So what is the problem?
So I think image building can be only rectified with image correction. So your advertisement should include reviews by.
Pardon?
Your image correction should include sharing experiences of tourists who have been there, and I think the government must ensure that the people who are coming in do have a decent stay, their concerns are addressed, and we develop, let's say, culture of homestays by incentivizing or telling families that this is one area where Bihar can prosper. And
But one thing you did not mention about law and order also. That
Yes,
is
sir.
that safety of the people.
Yes.
That is very, very important.
Yes.
Then Bihar is also called a land of disasters.
Yes, sir.
So what do you think about, because you are from Katihar, Katihar is affected by
Floods.
floods very regularly.
Yes.
So what are your thoughts that there is a shift in disaster management approach in Bihar also? So many new things are coming up. So what are the paradigm shift in disaster management in Bihar especially?
So personally, I feel it has become more proactive, mainly because of the infrastructure capacity that Bihar has been creating for the past decades. So that the movement is quick, the evacuation processes. So when I speak to my parents or grandparents regarding the experiences, I feel what I've learned is that the evacuation processes have become faster. The temporary deployment of, let's say, bridges to help people move over flooded areas, that's become faster. And there's also more equipment and capacity to drain out water. But so again, I think it's far from what should have been the optimum, but there's of course some improvement.
My last question is about rice fortification. Are you aware of that?
Yes, sir.
What is this and how it is going to help, especially your state Bihar?
So rice fortification is basically infusing nutrients like minerals and vitamins into, or essential micronutrients into rice, so that people consuming it are able to absorb more required nutrients in their body, and thus it can cure the issues of malnutrition and stunting and wasting.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Okay. Aman, you are from Delhi School of Economics.
Yes.
You've been asked many questions on economics. One question. You are appointed as advisor to the Prime Minister. What advice would you give him to increase employment in India, which, as you said, is a major problem?
So I would say, so again, skilling. I think that's very important, because you do have
But skilling is going on and on. It's a very vague term, skilling. You know, so much of big budget is allotted. But otherwise, any other way?
So I think MSMEs, because MSMEs have the largest employment
Because
potential.
India is only a trading country, not a manufacturing is not part
Yes.
of a, a character trait.
Yes.
Is that so? Why Indians are so bad in manufacturing?
So the problem that we see is when you look at the MSME sector, which is the cause of growth for other trading nations like China. So we are stuck in something called a missing middle, that you have a lot of small firms and a few large firms, but there are no middle firms, because there's an inertia for small firms to become larger because of regulations and law and order issues and credit and finance availability. So that particular journey of a firm being able to grow, I think that's one area where handholding is required, because if firms are able to expand in size, that's when you will produce more, you will employ more people.
We think the regulations are only in India, not in other countries which are developed fast.
So I think other countries do have regulations too. So, but our own economic survey suggests that the regulation processes are faster, the clearances are faster in neighboring countries.
But why in India we have not been able to do it fast so that we grow quickly? Why we are so slow in bits and pieces we do it?
So I think it may be a problem with the administration also, that we and maybe the political mileage also, that you need to have structures in place that are quick and efficient. And so for that, I think dialogue is important.
Okay, you have opted for the second preference is Indian Foreign Service.
Yes, sir.
Why have you put Indian Police Service at 5th?
So mainly because it comes from my background in economics. So I had always wanted to work in a field which does justice to my background, which is economics, because my entire academic career has revolved around that. So I think as a person, the capabilities that I've acquired in academics or otherwise, I think I'll be able to better utilize an IRS. And,
All right,
yes,
all right. But now you are an officer, young officer recruited in the top services. And what are the good traits a young officer should possess?
So I think first is commitment, of course, because deviation nowadays is, I think you can easily.
Commitment to what?
Yes, sir.
Commitment to what?
So commitment to doing your duty.
Okay.
So which is
Second?
constitutional ideals and.
Second?
So second is hard work.
That's okay. That once you get selected only through hard work,
Yes, sir.
that's expected. A young officer must be working hard.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So I think austerity is being the quality of fortitude or austerity, because there will.
Okay, now you are, suppose you land up in the police service
Yes, sir.
or in the IAS, of course, and you're a DM of a district, and there are clashes between two sections, as we see many times in many states. And you are asked by the seniors or the political leaders that this particular group belongs to our party and the other one is not. You arrest people more from the other group, not from our group. What decision would you take?
So again, I will maybe examine the specifics of the situation happening then.
And then I've explained to you.
Yes,
what
sir.
decision would you take?
So I think I will put law and order as the paramount importance.
Law and order is not. What decision? They say you arrest people from this group, not from that group.
So I will ensure
And
that.
you're a DM of a district. You have to take the boss of the district. How would you react to this thing? What decision would you take?
So I will probably ensure that the process is fair, the law and order process is to disperse the situation.
So what will you tell the leaders? They say, yeah, don't arrest people from this group, arrest from them. What will be your reply to them? As a youngster, say 6-year service after training, what will you tell them?
So I'll probably first try to have a good dialogue with him and explain to him the specifics.
खत्म हो गया.
Yes.
End में आता है कि आप करना है कि नहीं करना. Will you do it or not? They tell you. What reply would you give?
So I don't think, my personal integrity won't allow me to do something.
What reply? Suppose I'm asking you a dialogue. Suppose I'm asking you, will you do it or not? What will you tell me?
So again, sir, I don't think it can be a binary answer. I will try.
Chalo,
I will try having
anyway.
a dialogue with you. And
Anyway, later on we'll talk about it.
Aman, India and China, they do not have a very good relations for the last few years. And if China attacks India, like it believes that Arunachal is its southern Tibet, it calls it southern Tibet. And as Russia has attacked on Ukraine, if same thing happens with India, so tell me, which are the countries which will come into the support of India?
so again, so I think first we'll have to define what support is, because the support that we're seeing for Ukraine, so no country is engaging in direct offense against Russia. It's more of military and diplomatic support. So I definitely think so. Against China, US will come to maybe supplying arms. They won't, of course, engage in a direct combat with us, but they will supply arms and ammunition and also try for diplomatic solutions.
Then it is a complete failure of Indian foreign policy. Means if we do not have any alliance which will come into protect and support of India, so can we think of that as a failure?
No, so I think so. The geopolitics of today has become like that. That countries will put their self-interest first, which is managing your personal interest first. Because if US engages in a direct offense against China,
So that is why, Aman, I'm saying, means in 1950s, America extended hand to India and giving nuclear arsenals to India. India refused. Again, this time in America was suggesting, let's make Quad a security umbrella, and like NATO, India refused. So is it not? I think we are living in still doldrums, very confused.
so I think we do have to cultivate our diplomacy and geopolitics in that manner that we can get the maximum possible solution in the future, help and assist in the future if there's a situation like this. So
Do we need to change the Tibet policy? Means we started believing that Tibet is an integral part of China, and that is how the whole problem started. So now it is the time we need to change the Tibet policy. Tell politely to Dalai Lama, please leave this land and go to your own country. What China wanted from us.
So according to me, I think the change of stance shouldn't come right now, because this is the phase of I would say blooming of our foreign policy when it comes to Quad or relations with the US and in the Indo-Pacific. So we should let that mature first, get stronger by forming alliances and having good diplomatic relations, and then maybe in the future, sir, if the hostile tensions continue, there can be change of stance. But so personally, I don't think this is the right time for a direct change in stance.
Aman, you are from Katihar, and Katihar is its airport became operational couple of years back.
No, sir.
Was it existence earlier?
So yes, sir. It operated for like a month, and then it had to shut down.
So what was the reason of shutting down?
So there were hardly any flights, and
Because of the flood.
Yes. No, sir. So because they didn't, the airline operators could not like get a decent number of passengers for it to be economical to run.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Thank you.